Small city thinking, I get why you left. Small-minded people sure know how to drink. I came to the party, I laughed at the jokes you made. I wish that I hadn't, 'cause now the joke's on me. I didn't come here just so I could watch you make a mess.
With the new year upon us, we are faced with a decision. We can choose to be more than what we are, or we can remain the same. Our world is going to be divided almost like politics, where it's divided from Democrats to Republicans to genders, men and women, where now we have to look at, am I on the winning side? And it's not so much that we're on a winning side or a losing side, but can I be on the side that is going to promote and uplift one another? And today I said, I want to bring on a group of women who have done amazing things in their life. And I want to bring on individuals who are business owners, who are educators, who are coaches, who basically say, I want the world to be a better place. Each of the guests today on our panel, we're going to be talking about empowering women to be better in their life, not only in their relationships, their careers, personal and professional, essentially, but in all aspects, because at the inception of something new, that is when people typically say, I want to change. I want to do something different. The path that I'm on is not the path for me. So let's change it. And I believe when it comes to women, they do such an amazing job at empowering and lifting and asking for help. Men on the other side, we are a little bit more stubborn. But today we're going to be bringing on a wonderful panel of coaches and guests, as I said, to talk about empowering women in 2025. I would like to go around the room. I would start off with Whitney. If you can introduce yourself, tell the world who you are, a little bit about what you do, and then also please plug your website and socials.
Well, I'm Whitney Prude. I am a pharmacist and also a health and wellness coach. I own my own business, Whole and Happy Living. And basically what I do is take women through a 16-week program really focused on health and wellness. And, a lot of what drives individuals, or especially women, to changing their health is that, they have excess weight that they want to lose. And so a lot of women that come into my program, they want to lose weight, but we focus a lot on, why did you get here in the first place? Why are you staying stuck? What's the root cause, instead of just trying to change, food and kill yourself at the gym? How do we really address this in a way that you can get long-term lasting results and really transform your health and your life from the inside out? Ultimately, that's what I do. My website is mywholeandhappylife.com, and my Instagram's the same, at mywholeandhappylife.
Perfect. And we're going to just jump right to Daina. Same thing.
Hi, so I'm a nutrition therapist master. I'm an actual ex-civil engineer, and my own health journey brought me to a completely different field, which was studying holistic nutrition. I work with mainly women, 20s to 40s, who struggle with digestive issues and skin conditions like acne, eczema, psoriasis, and that was part of my own journey. So I have a very holistic approach to nutrition. Typically, the women I work with are already very health conscious. They've gone through the gamut of doctors. They've seen practitioners who told them they're fine, nothing wrong with them, but they feel like crap. And these symptoms are just not going away. So I typically lean on functional lab testing. We do a lot of gut testing to figure out what's going on. We change their diet, their lifestyle, work on stress management to really get them to a place where they feel really good. And my business is called Table to Crave. That's my website and my Instagram handle.
Perfect. Arlene?
Gosh, I'm in the company of amazing women. So my name is Arlene Cohen Miller, and I am a work-life balance and harmony coach for women and a transformational mentor for men and women. I'm also a Colorado attorney, a certified meditation facilitator, and I have a diploma in transformational holistic counseling. And obviously I love learning, but I really love working with women and just helping them define that balance and harmony in their life in a way that works for them, in a way they can be flexible and adaptable, and a way that really meets their needs, who they are and where they're at, again, on a very holistic, kind of even spiritual level. My website is Jewel Consultancy, like the diamond. If you search the internet under Arlene Cohen Miller, you can find me on all social media sites.
Aden, I know you're just hopping in, so we'll have to do a little backtrack a little bit. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Fantastic. So yeah, hi, I'm Aden. I've been on the show with Michael before. My company is called Art of Change. I work as a consultant, speaker, and trainer, helping people in organizations communicate more effectively with each other and have better team dynamics. And I come from a background of improvisation as well as the communication skills. I'm like a legacy. My company was founded by my dad, who is the best-selling author of Dealing with People You Can't Stand. So that's that's my background. That's where I'm coming from. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look for my name, Aden Nepom. I'm the only one. And of course, if you feel like looking at my website and seeing what I do, that's artofchange.com.
Perfect. And I do want to put a disclaimer out there. I know there might be some gentlemen out there listening to the podcast. You might think this episode is not for me. Well, this episode is for you because maybe one day you're going to have a wife, you're going to have a daughter, and you're going to want to know these things because here I'm surrounded by three not only successful, but beautiful people, not just on the outside, but the inside too. The guests that I choose from my group episodes are handpicked, they're selected. I'm not saying, okay, well, you want to come on? Sure, you come on, great. Typically, you have to be a guest already of the podcast to be even on a group episode. So that means if you were never a guest on the podcast where we did a recording and it got aired, you're not coming on the group episode. So this group here is of a select crop more so than, okay, I'm just bringing on random people. I have faith in this group, in this panel today. One of the questions I want to ask initially in good faith is, when we're trying to empower women today, it's almost like an uphill battle, it seems like, because there's a battle almost between a professional life and a personal life. In a sense, there could be a balance, there could be a harmony there. I know many women, just from working with them and just knowing what's happening is they feel like they have to sacrifice one or the other. They have to sacrifice their career, they have to sacrifice their family. I want to empower women today that if they want to be a family woman, stay-at-home wife, whatever, or if they want to be a boss babe, a career woman, go for it. What is your take on this whole concept of a woman and empowering herself to be better this year, whether it be professional or personal? And I would like to begin with Daina, if you could give us your insight on that.
It is a hard thing to think about with how much we are bombarded with as women and how much we're expected to do, whether that's raising kids, having our successful careers, taking care of the home, and all the classic things, but also the modern things that a woman is expected to do. I find it very interesting that there's a new movement, sort of, what do they call it? The trad wife. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah, I find this so interesting, that the traditional wife, in other words. And there's sort of a movement of getting back to that traditional wife concept of the woman who stays home, who takes care of the kids, who homesteads, who raises chickens, who makes sauerkraut, all the things. I think that's a good sign. It's a good sign of women sort of, some of them coming back to those classic roots, some of them wanting to give up this grind that we're expected to do. And that's okay. Because I think for many, many years, it was sort of expected that women are able to juggle all the balls, do everything. And now we're sort of taking a stance of like, I don't have to be a career woman if I don't want to. I don't have to be a boss babe if I don't want to. And that's okay. Other women, I think it's fabulous that they want to do that, start careers, start businesses like all of we have here. So I think in general, I'm very interested to see how that movement will change and how, I guess, women will establish themselves.
I love what you just shared, Dana. I really feel that we need to acknowledge that women are different than men. I mean, we actually physically, biologically give birth to a child. I think that it's really unhealthy to think that we can be all things to everybody. We can be absolutely 110% fantastic in business and 100% fantastic as a mom and 100% fantastic with whatever we eat and all the way we exercise. It makes me tired thinking about it. And we have to really have a knowing of ourselves and our priorities and what we want to do and how we want to be in life. I mean, I started my law practice and found out I was pregnant. My first year of being a mother and having a law firm, I worked part time. It was physically impossible to do it all. I was exhausted. And I think that as women, we can empower ourselves to live our dreams, but in a way that works for us. And it can be unique for each woman. We don't have to fit a mold and we can still be productive, but we don't have to. When I first started practicing an attorney, the outfits that I had to pick from look like a man suit with a women's kind of twist to it. We can just be ourselves. And I think that when we empower ourselves to really live our dreams, and maybe if we need a coach to help us walk through that, we can bring our uniqueness and our amazingness to the world, but in a way that doesn't make us like be a wet puddle on the floor because we've given away everything to everybody. We always have to come back to loving and appreciating ourselves and filling our cup with love so that we can go out and give what we choose to give to the world.
Thank you for both of your comments. And just to kind of add on to that, I think, what I see the most, because the women that I have coming in, to work with me are women who are struggling with their health. And one of the most common things that I see is women that fall into these categories, right, that we're talking about. They're people pleasing, taking care of everybody else. They're overachieving at work. They are finding outside sources essentially for their self-worth, their self-love, and taking care of the world. Taking care of the world, essentially. For many years, their health gets put on the back burner. One of the things that we work on is how do we actually start taking care of ourselves, and how do we actually start changing our expectations? Do we have to be that career woman and take care of everything and take care of our parents and take care of, be at the PTA and be at the church and be, like we feel like there's expectations to do all of these things, and we say that it's like I don't have time to take care of myself because I'm doing all of these things. And the reality is what I always try to help and encourage women to do is to rethink their priorities. So when we really take the time, and I'll ask people, list out your top 5 priorities. Of course, we put in the priorities, and the number one is, my kids, and then my husband, and then my job, and then my, family and friends and relationships, and then my hobbies or whatever. And where do we fall? Where does our health fall on that priority list? And so it ends up being a shift, right? Where instead of us and our own health not being on the list at all, right, we have to not only put it on the list, but it needs to become number one. And a lot of women feel like that's selfish. Like they feel guilty taking care of themselves. But the reality is that, just like on an airplane, we have to put on our own oxygen mask before we put everybody else's oxygen masks on, or we're not going to make it. We're not going to be here to take care of those people that we want to be able to show up for. So it's a battle, it's like being, finding your place as a woman. But the reality is that we do get to say no, and we do get to think through what are the highest priorities, what are the most important things to me and my health and my family. And when it doesn't really fall in line with the right motivation for doing that thing, then the answer needs to be no.
Yeah, I heard Whitney talking a little bit about boundary setting, and I think that's, for mental health reasons, that's great. But I think when we think about communication, which is where I'm coming from, boundary setting and conversations is really, really key to having difficult conversations. And I would love to see more women setting clear boundaries within the constraints of a conversation. What I mean by that is like, here's the purpose of our conversation. Here's what I'd like to accomplish in our conversation. And here's how we'll do that. Here are the rules for this interaction. And then asking for agreement on those rules before moving forward. I think we'll have better conversations in general if we can agree to some ground rules as a whole. And I would love to see women doing more of that, as opposed to working from a place of either reactivity or such like strong walls because of the fear of how a conversation is going to go, that it gets in the way of having those important conversations. So setting boundaries around how we talk to each other, I think, would be really useful moving forward.
Okay, so setting boundaries on how we talk to each other. Are there any other boundaries that you believe women should be looking at in 2025?
I feel like the same stuff in any year applies in the year 2025 when it comes to, you know what I mean? It's like we all strive to set boundaries around the amount of time we spend on stuff we don't want to spend it on, really guarding, taking time to care for ourselves or our loved ones, or, we always strive for these things. Realistically, people are going to people, and I think that's going to show up next year the way it always has. So what I like to think about, instead of thinking about time boundaries, we all do the best we can. I just really like to think about choosing how we interact with each other as an important step moving forward. And I should be clear, I don't think that's specific for women. I think that's everybody. I think it's an everybody thing. As much as I am a woman and I care about women's issues, I'm often thinking about things on a broader level than just this is about women. So I think I should be clear about that.
100%. And definitely, this is not something where we're going to single any type of person out. Race, culture, gender it's essentially just looking at, women today in boundaries. And I do want to pass it to Whitney now to talk on the topic of boundaries in women.
Yeah, so boundaries, I mean, boundaries can be a lot of things. It can be, it's like Aden was saying, it's like communicational boundaries, but it can also be like what we actually allow ourselves to do and what heights what we allow ourselves, to push ourselves to. And a lot of where this comes from for me is my past and my story. My parents went through a divorce when I was a teenager. I was 16. And I did what most humans do, and I shoved everything down and tried to survive and was an optimistic person and felt like I was kind of floating above the situation and thought that everything was honky-dory and fine. And the reality is that it wasn't. It was all, boiling up inside of me. What I did is the way that I managed all of those emotions was I became hyper-focused on becoming a pharmacist. And so what I did is I pushed myself and I pushed myself and I pushed myself to overachieving, to busyness, to, that was my sense of self-worth. Lo and behold, by the time I get my first job, I get hired on at the Mayo Clinic, and 9 months into that, I end up with, I've driven my body and my health into the ground. I end up with an autoimmune disease. And now I've had to be able to take a step back from that career, right? It's like I worked my entire life to become a pharmacist. And in doing so, I ran my body and my health into the ground to the point where I essentially worked long enough to pay off my student loan. And then I had to walk away. And that's just, I mean, I still, try to wrap my brain around like, what the crap did I just do? Right. And so whether it's setting boundaries towards other people, I mean, a lot of times, like say, for example, I'm working with a woman who's dealing with a narcissist in a relationship, or a narcissistic parent or something, where they're trying to set boundaries where they can actually be healthy in their own lives. I mean, we also have to like take a step back and be aware of what we're doing to ourselves, because we also need to set boundaries with ourselves. It's like I have the personality of an achiever, and so I'm just achieve, right? And recognition and be successful in all of these things. And the reality is that I essentially crippled myself from being able to achieve what I set out my whole life to accomplish. So it's just kind of a different perspective of like boundaries can come in every shape and size, whether it's people, whether it's with ourselves. And ultimately at the end of the day, right, we need to take a step back and have a little bit of self-awareness and self-compassion, understanding, and say, what's going on here? Right? And get the help that we need, and really analyze and look inwardly and see what is actually going on, and get the help that we need.
Oh, well, I appreciate you talking about boundaries from the physical place. I work with my clients and myself with boundaries more energetically, because was sort of born, I didn't realize this until I was much older, kind of empathic, intuitive, and very sensitive. So the things that my parents might say to me, my brothers were fine with. They didn't even notice, but it sort of knocked me on the ground. And so one of the journeys that I've been on that started, I guess, in full force when my son was 3 and I got divorced, was he developed ADHD, and I was really looking for ways to heal him. And I studied a bunch of healing modalities besides what I shared, and was on a path to heal myself. And in the meantime, I really learned how to set really clear, strong boundaries energetically with myself that have really changed my life. And that's what I share with a lot of other people when I'm mentoring. And some of the things that we can do is that, I could put a really big golden bubble of protection around me. And I affirm that I am only open to the energies of unconditional love and higher. Love that's given freely with no expectation of getting anything back in return. So if anyone sends me any energy that's not about love, that's about fear, that's about trying to be an energy vampire and suck my energy or dump all their problems in my energy field, as long as I'm holding that nice big judgment free space, it's just going to sort of bounce off and go back to them. And, I also work on like filling my space up with light and love, like the clear white light and the rose pink eternal love of source, and working with cutting energetic connections energetically that are not about love. Because anytime that we talk to someone, anytime we think about someone, anytime someone thinks about us or talks to us, energetic connections are established. So even if it's someone you really love, if they're having a bad hair day or a bad hair moment, they're triggered by someone who cut them off on the road, or someone sent them a text, or they saw something about politics on the TV, whatever it is, and they have a big reaction. If those energetic connections that are not about love haven't been cut and cleared and cleansed, we're going to feel horrible, but we can't do anything about it because it's not our stuff. The only thing that we can clear energetically is our own stuff. So one simple way that we can handle that is just to visualize like the golden cylinder coming down around our bodies several times a day, just cutting energetic connections that are not about love. I mean, so much more like we can really work on being fully grounded and present in our bodies as part of our boundaries. If we're grounded and fully present and we're really here, then we're going to be like aligned to love and centered in our hearts. And we're not going to be able to be pushed over by other people pushing their itinerary on us. We're going to have that ability energetically and in our hearts to say no, like Whitney was sharing.
Michael, can I also add something here?
You can,
Okay,
yeah, you
great.
can interject.
One of the things that I'm really noticing in the conversation around boundaries coming up for me is something that I'm wanting for 2025 in general is actually a little bit of a removal of some boundaries. So I just feel like I need to say that as well. There's been a lot of walls up over the last, I'm going to say decade now, where people are uninterested in hearing other people's points of view or perceive somebody's disagreement on a particular issue. I think Arlene brought up politics as an example of something, and this brought this up for me. I just am such a big believer that, like, if we don't have hard conversations, then we just get farther and farther apart. I'm reminded of a family member who recently cut another family member out because of a political view, and that was their choice around protecting their own mental health. And I can't really say don't do that or poo-poo that idea. I understand why those hard decisions need to be made for some folks some of the time. But what I would love to see happening as we move into this new year, this is such a new opportunity to bring totally different energy into how we think about communicating with each other around hard topics. And rather than perceiving somebody's disagreement as a threat to your existence, for example, or a threat to your mental health, what if we can set up sort of what Whitney was saying, an internal boundary around that idea that says, well, actually, we can have different points of view. We're allowed to do that. And I can get really curious about what somebody else has to say without it being a threat to who I am, my ethics, my morals, whatever. I can get really curious from a genuine place. And I just would love to see more of that happening around the hard stuff, which I think Michael will probably be not a surprise to that I feel that way. But it's something that like is coming up for me as we're thinking about boundaries is like, what if there's also an opening? What if there's also a removal of a few boundaries? What if we experiment with that idea?
Can I add to that just really quickly? So I think Aden, I'm glad that you shared that. I think it is important to recognize that, like, yes, we can in terms of communication, right, that we're kind of getting rid of those boundaries, but I think a lot of it all comes down to, like, how much do we care about ourselves? Like, where's our own self-worth? Where's our own self-love? Because when we're grounded inside of ourselves, right, then we can accept all of those hard conversations, and it doesn't really phase us. Like, we can be open. It's like, oh, great, that's what you know, that's your thought, that's your perception, that's, you know, that's where you stand, and that's perfectly fine. And I love you anyways, and you can love me. And I think a lot of it comes from really embracing who we are and being confident in who we are and having that genuine self-love and self-worth inside of ourselves, so that we're not seeking that from other people, and that we're also not allowing other people and their opinions, their views to destroy us, right? Like, anyone can have all sorts of views that they want, but when we're really grounded in ourselves and we know where we stand, right, then we can have those conversations, and we don't need them. We don't need to be offended by someone else's view, and we don't need to, you know, the world can function around us, and we're happy functioning in ourselves, and we can be open to those types of things. So it's also, you know, focusing on building our own strength so that we can handle those types of conversations.
I really like the twist on this conversation happening right now, because I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I think the two words that just really stand out, and the two words to remember, are open and curious. Like, that is really what we should all be tapping into whenever we find ourselves in an uncomfortable situation. And I think that's a really good thing that you pointed out, Whitney, of if you're not able to accept someone else's view and it triggers something so that you feel that trigger, that's a time to question yourself. Why is that triggering me? What is this about me that's making the situation much more difficult than it might be for another person? So if you find yourself disagreeing with someone's political views, medical views, whatever it might be, it's like, why is this happening? And what inside of me is triggering this? So I love that. Back to actual boundaries of what we imagine boundaries to be. I actually went to a breathwork ceremony a couple weeks ago, and that was a big topic that we talked about in the breathwork ceremony, boundaries. And I just thought a really good practical tip that I came out with was one of the ways to set a boundary, more of a personal setting here, but to really be clear. And the practitioner was saying, clear is kind. The quote that I walked away with, sort of her examples that she gave, was when you're in a situation where you need to set a boundary, the way to phrase something could be something like, I know I used to host people, but that's not something I'm doing anymore. Or I used to speak openly about my relationships, but that's not something I'm doing anymore. And I thought that phrase was such a good one because it's such a knocker if you're in that uncomfortable situation where it just sort of ends the topic of, that's not something I'm talking about, that's not something I'm doing, I'm sorry, it's kind, it's clear. So if anybody finds themselves in a difficult situation, I feel like that phrase is a really good one to keep in your back pocket.
And can I add one more thing to the conversation since I sort of got it going here? I completely agree with you, Aden. So what I was talking about, when we set boundaries, we're setting them for ourselves, but when we have those boundaries and like everyone has shared and we feel aligned to love and centered in our hearts and really strong, then we can have those conversations. They're not going to bowl us over and we're not going to be judgmental like that. And I love what you were sharing, Daina, because that's one of the things I bring back to myself. My joke with myself is I used to meet a lot of people that I thought were arrogant and self-righteous and know-it-alls. And I got this really clear signal that I needed to look at myself and really clear what was in myself that was there. And it's like, oh, that's humbling. But when we bring those things back to ourselves, when we get triggered and find ways to clear them and let them go, then all of this stuff comes together that we've been talking about today. And I just wanted to throw that into the mix as well.
Perfect. And I love how the group episodes evolve. I don't have to give directions saying, okay, you can interrupt people. It's fine. Typically, I allow most of the things. If people are going to be rude to someone, I fix that. But typically, all of the guests that I bring on, like I said early on, all vetted. They know how to be cordial. They know how to have a good conversation. There's no issue there with, bringing on people with different views and different ideas. And then it brings to the mind community, right? Where community can be my neighbor, maybe. It could be maybe just my family, my friends that I known from high school, college, whatever it be. Sometimes in those communities, we can create echo chambers where we say, you know what, I'm only going to be around the people that have the same views as me, who have the same energy as me, whatever it be. I want to talk about, are those communities a good thing? Are those communities, something that we could be changing? Because I think what's happening in America, especially, is that we are no longer united, but we're divided. Because we can easily say, I'm going to only be around the people who have the same ideas and beliefs as me. And even if you have a different belief than me, it doesn't mean I want to cause you harm, but I don't want you in my circle. And I know you said something, Aden, early on about political views and, people disassociating with one another because of these different things. So now they're just forming communities of people who think like them or maybe have the same idea of future for them. So I wanted to pass that to you first, Aden, to talk about the idea or the concept of communities and echo chambers.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a recent development. I think humans have a tendency to seek like-minded individuals, and I don't think it's a conscious choice. I think we resonate with people who we see similarities in. It's a natural resonance. It feels great to be with somebody that we like, who seem to like us. And one of the ways we do that is we bounce ideas off of each other to see if it feels good to bounce ideas off of each other. So I don't think it's new and I don't think it's bad, but I do think that when there's a reality check, so let's just get into it, right? We just had a presidential election. Our president-elect was elected to some in an unsurprising way and to others in a devastating way. So we're having these two completely different perceptions of a thing that just happened. It happened. What I think would be particularly useful, I have people in my network who feel strongly on both sides of this election, just like I have people who have strong opinions on both sides of basically everything. I try and keep a wide swath of influences in my life. But what I witness on social media and in conversations with people I care about is this really not great reinforcement of these echo chambers. a bunch of people piling on with a sort of message of like, this is devastating. And if you think this election result is good, you should not be in my network of friends. You should leave the circle of friendship now. I don't want to hear what you have to say. And likewise, on the other side, where it's like, I couldn't be more thrilled if you didn't vote for my candidate, and you don't like this result, then I'm enjoying seeing you suffer. Like, it's like neither of those are healthy messages, and it doesn't help unite that division that we have. So, which is like a no-brainer. And if you say it to anybody, you're like, hey, this behavior is really dividing behavior. They're like, yes, I know, but I can't emotionally do anything different right now. So looking at that, knowing that people feel like they have to do a thing because emotionally they're in a place, maybe the goal isn't to fix bad behavior in an immediate sense. Please bear with me, this is a think out loud here. But I'm like, maybe this is something I've been trying to get people to do for years and years and years, is to be on their best behavior with each other. And maybe that goal is just like an impossibility. Maybe we should just acknowledge that humans are going to human. But maybe we can set a time limit on being horrible to each other. Like, let's do that for 5 minutes and then regroup. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if you need to gloat on social media, or if you need to grieve on social media, maybe like set a 24-hour time limit on that. And then maybe reach out to somebody who has a different perspective to you to get genuinely curious. I'm not saying that people need to be best friends with people who disagree with them on the important things, but I would suggest that expanding your point of view is always useful. Understanding what other people have to say, always a good idea. If you can do it, in my experience, the more you do it, the more you want to do it. And then you end up with a network of people like I have, which is really very varied in their perspectives. I have people who are like, DEI is the worst thing in the world. And then I'm also friends with people who are directors of DEI programs in corporations and her clients. And I can have interesting conversations with all of them. There's overlap in what people care about that they don't get to notice because they're too busy digging in. I love having those varied perspectives within my network of people. And I get that not everybody feels that way. However, if we can push each other or push ourselves to just get like 10% more curious, maybe that would help. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was a little longer of an answer than maybe I needed to give, but it was I'm just thinking ahead. It's like, maybe asking people to be on their best behavior always is just unreasonable. But maybe we could all do 10% more,
I'd like to talk about something. One thing that, social media is amazing, right? But it comes with a lot of negatives, and that is one negative. The things people say on social media, they wouldn't ever dare say out loud to someone's face. And I think that's a good check. Before writing anything on social media, posting, commenting, it's like, would I actually say this thing to a person's face? And you likely wouldn't. So I think that's also your 10% better, or get your anger out in 5 minutes and then you're done. Another strategy, just, be nice and be on your good behavior always, social media or in person. So I think that's one thing to think about. Just in general, finding that community. I think the people to think about in your community, who are those people that you could say anything to? And even if they don't agree with you, they'll still be your friend. They'll accept you. They'll listen. They'll be curious. I think about those people in my life, and there's not many of them. From different friend groups with different views, I have a couple stragglers who I know I can say anything to, and they won't disown me, they won't defriend me. So I think that's a good check for all of us to be like, can I become that person? Can someone come to me with anything they want to say, and I won't judge them, and I'll still remain their friend? And if everyone worked on that, we wouldn't have these echo chambers.
Yeah, I will say I have noticed there's been a bleed over from social media into how people interact face to face, which is so wild. So for the last, since social media became a thing, we got used to this idea that you could sort of scream into the void, and then, but we still behaved with decorum in person. What I'm noticing and what I'm hearing from clients and organizations is the communication is degrading face to face because people are now used to saying whatever's on their mind without a filter. And then they get into their space and they say things they would not have said 7 years ago, but they'll say them now out loud and cut people out of their lives because of it. So it is a big watch out for sure.
I'd like to add something to the mix. It just feels like there's a lot of separation energies on this planet, and they would like more than anything to pull people apart. And I was a member of a commercial law organization as an attorney, and a lot of my friends in that have different views than I do. And then they post on my Facebook page and they're very adamant, and that's okay. And I guess what I just focus on is that I don't have to agree with everything, but I still love you. I still care about you. I see the similarities in you. And there's a lot of people that don't seem to have the ability to do that right now. They get swept up by the tide. And I think the ones of us that are more heart centered and open enough to these other possibilities, it's up to us to model that behavior, to show that, we can do this in the world. We can be good friends with all the different political parties, and we don't have to, we can agree to disagree, but we can still know what the similarities are. We love our families. We have interest in certain kinds of music or movies, or there's more things that bring us together than pull us apart, because it feels like what's happening is a lot of the things that are common issues for all of us, maybe healthcare and childcare and roads and safe communities, those are being undermined and not funded because that energy is being pushed away in other directions that are there to divide us. We're not going to get everyone on board, but we can model that behavior and we can hold that ideal for others.
I have kind of an interesting perspective here, which is, I guess, the beauty of a group situation. And I certainly, agree with everything that has been said here. Me personally, just more in a way that I function, and I share this just because it's another perspective, it's another view about community. I I enjoy being an open-minded person, and so I have a hard time being a part of any groups that are very, very opinionated in one way or another, even if they agree with my opinion, right? And the reason being is that if I'm in a group that strongly believes one way, right, then we're typically bashing the other side. And I don't really want to be in that community, even if we hold the same opinion. And so when I was 21, so 15, 16 years ago, I gave up social media completely. And the reason that I walked away from social media is because I could feel the anxiety inside of myself in the likes, in the need for attention, in the, it's like how the comments and different things like that were actually affecting me as a person. And so I walked away from social media. And even when I started my business, it was very hard for me to get back on social media. But I was like, okay, as a business, I'll get back on social media. But even still, I hate posting. I have a VA and someone who manages my social media, and she's like, you gotta give me content. And I'm like, it's just, it's not an area where I thrive. People are like, well, who do you follow? I don't really follow people unless it's inspiring and uplifting. And I think that we get to choose where we put ourselves and what those communities and those things do to influence us, even if it's something that is, an area that agrees with your opinion. Are there also all of this negativity, right? So the only types of groups that I'm a part of are like coaching communities where we're all working together to achieve something, where we're working together to grow. Very, very few like celebrities maybe that I might follow, but it's because they're inspiring. The things that they're doing and the way that they're fighting and those types of things inspire me to be better. And so, and in thinking of kind of like what I do, like a community that's actually beneficial is, women will come into our community and they're all working to be healthy. They're all working to lose weight. We're encouraging one another. We're trying to achieve our best. And I think that again, in talking about boundaries, even within communities, like we get to choose where we put ourselves, right? We get to choose what types of things we have that are influencing us. My husband, he loves to listen to podcasts about politics and stay on top of the news and all sorts of stuff. And I just don't. Like, that's a lot of negativity in my life. Does that mean I don't love my husband? No, he loves to spend his time there, and that's totally fine. But for me, right, I don't have, it just doesn't resonate with me, and it doesn't help me to feel uplifted and encouraged. And so you got to choose where you spend your time and what you allow to influence you. Do you really want to be there? Is it bringing you down or is it bringing you up? And I would encourage people to choose communities and to choose environments that are building you up, that are helping you to grow, and not, choosing one side or another. And even if it's your viewpoint, then tearing down the other. Let's work together. Let's love ourselves. Let's love one another, and let's work towards a common goal.
Do you think it's important to remember that communities based on a particular thing in common. So I come from an improv background, and I'm, part of the reason I'm on social media, and I left for a few years because it is a double-edged sword, right? On one side is poison and on the other side is bonding. Oh, and also there's cats and there's comedy. So there's, but it's a necessity for me to be connected in an online way because I travel to perform and teach. This is a community of people bonded around a specific idea, which is doing improv, doing theater, performance stuff. Inside that community are people who have differing political views, who are rooting for different sides in a particular war, who are, whatever. And I do think that it's important, whatever community you are part of, whether you're in a knitting circle or a book group or whatever the interest is that draws people together, because again, it makes perfect sense for us to want to be with people who feel good to be around. And I would encourage more of that. Feeling good is great. You know what I mean? But remembering that there are different points of views on other stuff within that community, and it's not necessarily particularly useful to assume that just because we have X, Y, and Z in common, that we also have A, B, and C identical. It is the differences that makes us particularly unique and interesting in this world of there's so many billions of people here. It's great that we're not identical in our views and interests. Bonding over the things that feel good, let's keep bonding over those things. And the things that are different, maybe approach those with more curiosity.
And be understanding and accepting.
Yeah. And of course, I agree with you, Whitney. You have to make choices at the end of the day about where you want to spend your time and energy. If politics isn't lighting you up and one of your friends, that's all they can talk about, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, maybe it's a boundary. Hey, I love talking about knitting with you. I don't really enjoy talking about politics. My mom has a walking buddy. They've bonded over their tiny dogs and going for walks. And my mom does not love politics. And her walking buddy really loves politics. So on more than one occasion, when they've been off walking and talking, my mom has had to say, hey, I'd really rather not spend our time together talking about this because I enjoy spending time with you when we don't talk about that.
And I'd like to add something else to the table too, because I've taken a step back from watching so much about politics recently because it's really hard to do. But I also really feel passionately that if I'm going to be a driving force for love, for improvement, for evolution and growth, or whatever we're doing from whatever angle on the planet, I have to be somewhat informed. And so that I need to keep up with what's going on in the world. Maybe not everything, because sometimes it just feels like, oh my God, I just can't turn it on right now. But find ways to listen to some, at least in certain sound bites. So I do stay somewhat up to date with what's going on, and at least on a feeling basis, have some sort of knowing. I have some friends that are really, really into it, and I like to hear from them that watch this or do that, so I don't have to sift through everything. But I really feel it's part of my, as much as I wish it wasn't, sometimes my duty and responsibility to stay a little bit up to date.
Perfect. Now we are at the transition point. If you guys remember, we are going to be passing the host to someone else. Now, I'm going to be a ghost host, meaning that you're not going to ask me any questions. Now, if you do want to ask me a question, feel free. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions if you want to ask me a question. I'm going to start with Arlene. Arlene, you're going to be our first host today. You're going to ask the group of questions. It could be pertaining to something we said, if you wanted to elaborate on something. Maybe something that you have a yearning to ask us. Maybe you're working on something and you just wanted to kind of bounce off some ideas. So similar to how I was a host, you get to choose who goes first.
Right.
But before you do that, of course, ask us the question.
Okay, well, I want to ask a question that a coach asked me about 2 weeks ago that just sort of threw me like, oh my God, it felt like so expansive and amazing. And she just said, Arlene, if there was no limits in what you want to accomplish, then, I was talking about some goals, this next year, there's no limits whatsoever. How do you envision that goal? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And share, and she had it shared. She shared it with me. I shared it with her. I can't even talk. I'm so excited about it because it just broke some ceiling for me because I always was putting things in boxes about what I could do and what I could be. So if there was no limits for next year or even more than that, what would you be doing differently? What would you accomplish? How would that look like? How would that be? And I'll start with you, Daina.
Ooh, oh my gosh. I think all of us as business owners, the first thing always on my list is what from a business perspective could I accomplish? And then I try to pull myself back of like, it's not all about growing my business. It's not about that. But if it was from a business perspective, I would, this is going to sound so maybe boring, but I would love to be able to get a bigger coaching program in place. So I do nutrition therapy. Right now I'm at a place where I work one-on-one, which I love because one-on-one coaching is so powerful. You really get to bio-individualize everything, but there's only so much time in a day, right? Love to get to a place where I can actually build some kind of bigger practice, some kind of program where I can help so many women at the same time and be able just to sort of spread my knowledge and then build a community. I would love to be able to get my clients all involved with each other because it gets a little bit lonely in the virtual world of working one-on-one. From a more personal perspective, I had a client, I asked all my clients, what do you not have time for? And I want to hear what is their answer, what they don't have time for. I had a client recently say, I don't have time to rush. And I thought, wow, what a way to live life. I would love that, to just not have to rush, not have to have my calendar blocked off, panicking, feeling like I haven't done enough in a day when I have a little bit of a spare moment, filling it up with tasks I'm behind on. So, God, if there were no limits, wow, wouldn't that be amazing, not having to rush?
Yeah, it's like you start thinking about it, you start feeling into it and go, oh my God, there's still more. I kept on writing down more and more stuff. And so maybe we'll all do that too. So what about you, Aden, if there were no
Yeah,
limits?
I know exactly what I would do. And this is stuff that I'm already in talks with my husband about making some of these dreams come true. So, for those who know me, I am a joy driven person. Sometimes I can be very serious or very forceful in my ideas. However, the thing that lights me up is joy. And that's what draws me to improv. And the thing that I do the best and the most joyful in improv is doing musical improv. So, what I want, if the sky was the limit, and I think that it is, I want to bring more musical improv to the world, and I want to do it specifically in places where it doesn't make sense to have musical improv. I'm already working with Fortune 500 companies. That's where I want to put more musical improv. I want there to be more musical improv at their events. I want to be coaching my clients, not just to communicate well, but to make up songs on the spot, because there's just a thing that lights up on the inside when you let go of controlling the outcome of a song or needing it to be good and just let your heart sing. So that's what I would be doing. And we are talking about doing more of that next year. We are experimenting with the idea of if that should be in a theater space or if that should not be in a theater space, and we just start doing it with people. But that's where my head's at. And I do think the sky's the limit on that, don't you?
Oh gosh, you never know what answer you're going to
I
get
know
if you
you
ask
were
a
not
question like this.
expecting
This
that,
is
were
really
you?
fun.
I want to teach the world
No.
to sing.
Oh,
Yeah.
what about you, Whitney?
Yeah, so I think if the sky was the limit, I don't think my goals would change from what they already are. So I mentioned a little bit about my autoimmune condition. Since that has been a part of my life, my perspectives have changed a lot, my expectations have changed a lot, and I've had to be able to be content living a little bit differently than I have in the past. However, a lot of times we dream about having all of this money and being super successful and all of those things. And when it comes down to it, when I was faced with a chronic condition and I have all of these issues, with my body and that sort of thing, I'm, 35, almost 36, and haven't been able to have kids and have a family yet, my perspective changes. So my perspective is like everything that I do in my business. If you really get down to the heart, and as I don't tell a lot of people this, but really what's driving me at this point is making my business successful enough that I have enough income to be able to have a family and be able to pay for full-time help, because I can't do that. Like, I don't have the capabilities to do that anymore. Now, Arlene, if the limits were to take my chronic illness away, then we would go there.
Well, there are no
Then we
limits.
would go there.
There are no limits, but because chronic illness gone, health expansive
Chronic
there.
illness gone. Oh my goodness. I
Yes,
mean,
that is the
I would
limit,
be,
isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So, but I think even still, that's my focus at this point, right? That's really become my number one priority, and something that I've really grown to see that I really want, that I don't want to miss out on that in life, right? And I think that it is easy to dream and to think all about money and how big of a house could I have and what are the things that I could have and how awesome would it be. And at the end of the day, all I want is to have a kid.
No, hope you do. I know you're not here for that, Michael, but is there anything you want to add with the no sky to the limit before you
Sure,
get
sure.
another
I have no
question?
problem answering questions. So for me, mine is very simple. Being a business owner and, if you want to look at a gender roles, a man, like protect and provide for your family. But I know from my experience being a teacher and working with children for so long that both parents need to be present. As much as I would love to expand, I can't because as each of you know already, my wife's pregnant. She's going to pop any minute, right? Or any week, hopefully. It's important for me to be there for the kids. So if I didn't have limits, I would try to get more time in my day where I could spend time with the family and I can expand the business because expanding the business requires me to travel, to keynote speeches, and to leave the family. So I'm going to be gone weeks at a time sometimes. And I understand there are people who do it. But again, from my teaching background and working with children for so long, I know the negative effects to that if it doesn't matter who, it could be a son, daughter, whatever, the father not being in the picture for any extended period of time doesn't have good psychological effects on them later on. So it's good to be present, even as much as you want to make money, even as much as you want to put your name out there and be pronounced. It's something where I feel there's a limit, but I'm not afraid of that limit. Because I understand something very well. There are only going to be kids once. They're going to be adults forever. So that's basically my limit.
So your limit is to be the best dad you can possibly be.
Yes,
No
but then
limit.
also to have the business be the best it can be too. So it's kind of like you have like a battle, like who's going to win? Am I going to focus on the business solely, or I'm going to focus on the family? Now I do a good job doing both, but if you look at the amount of days I spend, 4 out of 7 days go to the business, 3 days goes to the family. I would love for all 7 days to go to the business, but again, I understand that I have to be there.
Well, thank you for letting me have this opportunity. That was really fun.
Yes, of course. And we're going to Whitney as our next host.
So my question will kind of steer along the health and wellness realm, just because that's my area of expertise. Now you're all successful women and striving to run your own businesses and be successful. But that comes with a lot of barriers and trying to balance your time and not overdoing it. So something that I think could be really valuable to those that are listening, how do you prioritize your health in your day to day so that not only, do you show up for your business, but you're able to actually show up for everything else in your life? And we'll go with Aden first.
I wish I could say that I have mastered this. I think that would be so cool to be able to be like, don't worry, everybody, I got this figured out. Let me tell you the secret. But I'm a human being, which means I'm a human doing. It's always a balancing act. I fluctuate pretty wildly. I come from my dad was, he still is a naturopathic physician. He's just retired. And he was the president of the Naturopathic Medicine Institute. And, he's been a huge influence on how I think about health. And I always come at it from a natural health standpoint. That being said, so like I try and make really healthy eating decisions. And I also am a human married to a dude who loves to eat like sweets and yummy stuff. And that's in the house. And like, I like to eat yummy stuff too. So and I don't want to live a life filled with restriction because then that does not nice things to my brain. So I don't think I've got this figured out just yet. All I can say to anybody who's trying to live a life that is healthy in terms of the nutrition you take in, the time that you spend, the sleep that you get, the self-love that you give, like cut yourself some slack. Like when I end up watching something on YouTube or TikTok or something, which I don't spend a lot of time doing, but when I do, inevitably somebody's telling me the secret to good health, which is the opposite of what somebody else shared. So I really think self-forgiveness is the best we can ever hope for.
Thanks, Aden. Daina.
So this is something that we work on a lot with our clients in the world of nutrition and health coaching. And for me personally, the thing that I've learned and the thing that I teach my clients is it really is about planning. because there's only so much we can rely on discipline and motivation. And as humans, we don't have much of that, especially when we have yummy snacks in the house, or we come home at 6 p.m. and we're starving and nothing is made. I mean, clearly we don't have the discipline to cook for an hour and a half. So the more I can plan, the more my clients can plan for those moments, the more successful you're going to be in keeping your health in tip-top shape and being ready for it. What Aden said, we're not expected to be 100%. Nobody should expect to be 100% because that's stressful and that takes all the joy out of healthy living. So finding those moments when you do fall off your plan or you have that delicious treat, and again, calling it a treat, not calling it a cheat. Another big thing we talk about, because that puts really bad energy around something if you're calling it a cheat food. No, it's a treat food. So enjoy those cookies or candy when you are eating it. So I'd say planning is the one thing that really, really works.
Is that for you as well as for your clients?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And I've just put it into my life, right? After years of doing this, I know that I cook dinner. I luckily enjoy cooking. I cook enough for about 4 to 6 meals. So we have leftover lunches, a little bit left over for the following dinner. Don't want to eat the same thing for 4 nights. So it's like all planning and figuring out what works for you, but definitely finding those strategies and then sticking to them. And in the moment, they kind of suck. Meal prepping sucks. You don't want to do that on a Sunday afternoon, but it sets you up for success for the rest of the week. So yeah, living for your
I do
future
have a
you.
hot tip I've discovered this winter, and I can't believe it's taken me this long. Just, you were talking about how you cook enough for leftovers. This is my hot tip that I've discovered by accident. My husband loves to cook in volume, which is great. And one of the things that he makes, this was the discovery, is like this stir-fried dirty rice, but it's turkey instead of, whatever. It's lighter, but it's whatever. It's still stir fried. But here's the discovery. So I was like craving soup. We had some of this. So I put a scoop of that in a bowl and I threw some chicken broth on top and threw it in the microwave and had the best soup I've ever had in my life. And I'm now addicted to what I'm calling leftover soup. Whatever we have in the fridge that's left over, I throw it in a bowl with some chicken broth. And that is my lunch. And I believe this has made a delicious soup. But like we did tacos the other night. I threw like literally a tablespoon of refried beans and some of the chicken that we made, like a squeeze of lime and some chicken broth. And I was like, it's amazing. The beans actually broke down and made like a rich, I'm just saying, try leftover soup. It's a time saver and it's delicious.
Awesome. Thanks, Aden. Yeah, and Daina, thanks for that as well. And Arlene, what are some things that you do?
Well, I'm always striving towards this, and this is my choice, but I always share with my clients as well that, and I got this from one of my friends, is that the most important thing that we can do for the food that we make is to actually put our love into it, which is what I'm hearing from you guys. When you put all this love and joy into your food, that's what you're eating and how you're nourishing your body. And so I highly recommend that, as well as just putting that self-love and that self-care into ourselves the best that we can. However that works for us, however it works for the audience, we all have our little ways that can really nurture and support ourselves. It's always important to give that to ourselves every day. For myself personally, I have a yoga practice that's like my game changer. Like it's active enough and it's soft enough to get things out but to feel better. And for me, it's like nature. Just get out. I'm gonna have a window over there. Get out and breathe in nature. Walk around. Be grateful for how beautiful it is. I mean, we have like the views, the mountains of Colorado out the window back here, and we all have something to be grateful for, especially outside. And when we get stressed with food or whatever it is, go outside and breathe. Look around you. Yeah, it's kind of adding the mixture to the soup that you created, Aden.
Yeah.
Fresh air is
Throw it all into the soup.
fresh air is great.
And Michael, what about you? I think it's important to get a male's perspective as well.
Well, for me, when I think about the question, I think about lifestyle. I think about what would you like to be able to do in your life. For example, I know for my mom and my dad, they are getting up there in age. They have 2 dogs, but other than that, they don't have a reason to get out and to be healthy. But when we have grandbabies around them, oh, let me tell you, they're running around, they're moving. And one of their goals becomes, I want to be able to do the things that I love, that they want to be able to run with their grandkids and to lift them up and, to chase them, etc. And I think what I would like to do is I would like to be active in my kids' life. It doesn't matter if I'm 50, 60, whatever. I should be able to do the things that, they expect me to do. So I'm rising to the expectations. So my health, I mean, it comes down to diet. It comes down to physical fitness, how many days you want to go into the gym. I think if you can become disciplined in just those little aspects of life, you're going to go so far. I'm reading a book. It's called The Mars and Venus Diet. And it talks about how different types of hormones and different types of foods affect men and affects women, and how you can leverage certain meals of the day, certain types of foods. What type of foods do you need? It's like like omega 3s and like things like that. Just incorporating these little things into your diet, it gets you to be more active. And I think that's where many people should begin. They should look at their diet and they should say, hey, let me figure out how I can get more energy. Because I know the New Year's, everyone's like, let me go to the gym so I can get more energy. But their diet has been struggling. All of last year, we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we have the holidays eatery. There's so many cakes and pies. Before you know it, you have given yourself a foundation of struggle. You're addicted to this high fructose corn syrup. You're addicted to the sweets or treats or whatever you want to consider them. But at the end of the day, you have to, deliberate and say, okay, where do I want to be in 3 to 6 months from now? And then from there, you develop a plan, figure out strategies, whether it be meal prep, making soups on the go. It doesn't necessarily matter how you do it as long as you do it.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for answering the question.
Of course. Next is
boy.
Aden.
Yeah, I was like, what do I want to ask you guys? And I don't think I really came up with a satisfying question. So I think what I'll do instead is just share something that I've read recently and get your thoughts. Is that cool?
Yes.
So, especially Michael, I'd like to include you in this because this is about kids. And this is not my area of expertise. I work with adults. But what I recognize is that the kids today are future adults. So these are my future clients in theory. The idea I'd like to run by you and just get your reaction to is, on the one hand, parenting and school counseling and influence in general has steered towards really like making emotional space for children, really trying to check in with them on like, how are they feeling? And what I noticed in our own home is like, there isn't a big push. Like I experienced growing up, there was always like push to make a choice, push to do a thing. Don't let people, push you around was something that I was told while being pushed in particular directions. In our own home with our own kid, it's very much like we check in with her. We're like, would you like to go to a friend's house? And she's like, no. So she's never played at a friend's house. Her friends always have to come here. We haven't pushed her out of the nest, so to speak, which feels very on par with parenting in general right now, the trends around it. However, statistically, the mental health of the current generation that just is in college is really not great. And book that I've been listening to, I don't actually want to, I feel like it's a controversial book title, so I'm afraid to say what the title of this book is.
Say it.
Okay,
Say
fine.
it.
I'm reading Bad Therapy. But I think the case the book is making is really interesting, which is that these more like open, like navel-gazy practices of teaching people to really check in with themselves and check in with what is their body feeling, where is their emotional state, as opposed to check in with the task ahead and what is the status of the task, what's your goal, how far are you towards the goal, has set people up to not be in a great position. I'm weighing, intuitively, I just am like a loving, open person, and I just want to check in with people. And on the other hand, I like, am I setting people up for success here? And I just wanted to open sort of that can of worms here. This seems like a great group of people to weigh in on your thought. I'm going to open it very generally and broadly. What are your thoughts around these things? And Michael, I'd actually like to start with you because of your specific background working with kids.
So this is a can of worms.
It's your podcast. You tread how you want to.
Yeah.
Cut it out if you want, Michael.
No. I'm keeping every bit in. There's an issue with how we are raising our children today. We can look at the research of how children are developing by putting them in schools. Has been a huge influx since the pandemic for homeschoolers. And it's not because the parents don't have faith in the school system. It's just that they do not want to have adults later on that need to get coaching or need to get therapy. They understand that schooling is a great way for them to socialize. It's a great way for them to get an education, or maybe even to get out of their hair for a little bit so they can breathe. But research has shown that a homeschooler is 71% better at socialization than them. They score 84% better on tests. So are they getting education? There's a book called Weapons of Mass Instruction.
Okay.
And basically, it talks about the concept of what is schooling and education. And I think of the quote of, do not allow your child schooling to get in the way of their education. So we have to be very careful as parents in how we are educating our children, from the technology that they have at their fingertips. They can go on their iPad, their laptops, whatever, be their phones, and they can have a plethora of information. And the problem is, we're giving children adult problems, and they're not equipped to handle adult problems. For example, a male is his brain is not fully developed by the age of 25. And yet we're giving him all of these things, pornography, distractions on the internet. And we have to expect, well, he's going to be okay later on. And the reality is he's not going to be okay. He's going to need some coaching. He's going to need some guidance. He's going to need some mentors. And, just society as a whole, we learn to kind of do things by ourselves rather than to ask for help. And if parents just simply gave some attention to how they are going with the system, they can mitigate a lot of things. And I'm going to end on this because this is basically the key point. As a parent, you think you have to send your kid to school. So you say, you know what, at 3 or whatever, you send them to daycare, then you send them to pre-K, then you send them to, regular elementary, then high school, then college, right? But what happens during the pre-K to early elementary time is that they learn to be independent from you. So now you are no longer their sole educator, but it's a teacher, it's their peers. And so you have to ask yourself, you're giving everyone a bit of, their say now. They're creating their identity based off of what the teacher says or what their peers say, no longer about what mom and dad says. Now, this is why sometimes when a family is religious, they do better typically. It's a book for men, Raising a Modern Day Knight, where it talks about the initiation for men to go into manhood, where they bring in Christianity. It's just one method, but parents should be the primary educator for their children. And I find that if a parent could do that, and they do it in a way where they ask for help, because of course I know I can do a lot of things, but when it comes to my kids, they're going to get coaches, they're going to get other instructors, they're going to get other people besides me, because I know at the end of the day, dad can only do what dad does, and mom can only do what mom does. And we need other people to raise the children, right? They say it takes a tribe to raise a child, and that is very true. And we have to stop with the mindset of, I'm going to do this by myself, rather than with our current trajectory of put them in schools and let's hope for the best.
Whitney, what are your thoughts?
Oh my goodness.
It's a big
You
one.
said you want to be a mom, so
It
let's
is.
hear.
I mean, you want to hear my honesty is I'm absolutely terrified to try and raise a kid in this world. That's just it. I mean, I have, nieces and nephews and I'm very close with them. And, one of them the oldest turned 16 in a week, and the things that they talk about that they see in school, and the things these days that they're putting up with. And I mean, there's so many weird, crazy things going on these days. And I don't know that I have, a really educated perspective to share. I don't work with kids. I don't have kids. I have my nieces and nephews. One thing that I have noticed with the upcoming generation in terms of work, these younger generation coming into work that my mom has talked about. She's a manager in a pharmacy, and they're just like, well, I'm only going to work 4 hours today because I have some errands that I'm going to run. And it's like, wait, like you're expected to be here for you took a full-time job and you're expected to be here, And so I think that we still, even though we are getting into the feeling and paying attention to ourselves and loving ourselves and all of those things, it's still really important to push our kids as parents to be responsible and to work hard and to realize that what they are going to get in life is what they work for, and that there are winners and there are losers, that everybody's not a winner. That we do have to fight for what we get. And, you do have to push yourself out. You do have to get uncomfortable. You do have to go through hard situations so that you can learn. And so I think that, as parents, if we pull our kids out of working hard and out of, it's like, you don't want to do anything? Okay. You don't have to do anything. I think that it's our responsibility to help our kids to be successful and to push them and to help them realize you do have to show up to work. And you do need to, you do need to get an education, and you do need to try and do well, and you do need to try and be successful in this world. And so I think that 100% there's a balance, and that as parents we need to realize that, as a teenager, they're not going to make good decisions, right? This is a reality of being a teenager, and we do have to step in some instances and say, actually, this is how things are going to go right now, and save them from destroying their life when they're not thinking clearly. I mean, I think there's a balance, right? Of like allowing your kid to be who they are and accepting them and helping them to recognize their emotions and to genuinely love themselves. But at the same time, don't let them screw their life up, right? We do have to push because we are the adult and we see the end result. And it's important. We do need to be present in our kids' life, and we do need to give them that push.
Arlene?
One was share a personal thing that I experienced, but also I've watched a bunch of videos where they're homeschooling kids and they're out in nature and they're giving them things to play with and they're climbing up trees like I did when I was a kid and doing all sorts of things where you could quote get hurt and it's so important to have kids locked up in classrooms and stuck to their iPads and their cell phones all day and not know how to have a freaking conversation with anybody. That's just not healthy. That's just destructive to people. It's destructive to a whole society. How are you going to have a relationship with someone if the only way you can do is sit next to them and text? I don't get it. And when I see these like videos or whatever with kids outside all playing together and maybe a couple of homeschool moms bring their kids out in their nature, they're doing all sorts of fun things and maybe they could get a little bit hurt or bruised, but they're allowing them to explore. It feels so amazing because it feels so constricted of how we're narrowing things down in schools and where the art should be expanded. And the theater should be expanded and give them that outlet of creativity. And I do agree that we as parents we do need to be involved in our kids' life. And I guess my perspective from that is that my son had ADHD, and by the time he reached like middle school, beginning of high school, this is what I learned, that I was arrogant because I was taking away the lessons that he needed to learn because I was like a hovering mom. He would do his homework, he wouldn't turn in his homework. And so I was there desperately trying to get him to turn it in. And from a friend that mentored me, he just said, Arlene, this is really arrogant. You're not preparing him for adulthood. He needs to know what it feels like to fail. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. I like stepped way back. And he did. He got hired and fired from a couple of jobs. He did make it through college, which was totally amazing to me. Best thing I ever did for him to step back and allow him to fail. He has his own little business now. He's this really successful entrepreneur. He actually works with kids. He's a chess instructor. He's amazing at it. And I don't think he would be the kind of person, the kind of man he is today if I hadn't had the humiliation just to go, you're right. I need to step back. We need to allow our kids to have experiences where they can fail. And if they do fail, how to pick themselves back up and start all over again without us babying them. And that was a real big learning curve for me as a mother and sort of looking back earlier where I could have done that before.
Thank you. Daina?
So, I mean, I don't have kids. Hopefully soon we'll have kids with my husband. But I completely agree with Whitney. It is terrifying to think about the kids that we're bringing into this modern world because, all of us were teenagers, definitely 10 plus years ago or so before social media. And the world is different with social media. And we learn about the detrimental effects of modern day technology years later. And at that point, we've exposed an entire generation to these effects that really disrupt their social skills and completely change their personalities and all the things that come with things like social media exposure. So really the only thing we have control over is how we raise our kids in our own home and our relationships with them as parents. And what Michael was talking about, the people that we expose them to who are their other guides and the people who basically expose them to information and all the things. So I'm actually reading a book about how to raise kids, sort of. It's called Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy. And I'm sure it's a book that I'll come back to as a parent, but it's how to deal with kids when they're very difficult. Basically, emotional regulation is something that they're learning. How do you deal with that as a parent? How do you not blame yourself? Because we're all good inside, both as parents and the kids. It's just how do we communicate properly? So that's something that I'm working on to prepare myself for the day that I do have kids, because there's so many things that I can't control, but that is one thing that I can control.
Can I add something there? I've seen a couple of really awesome videos about parents helping their young children emotionally regulate, because when children are young, they do not have the ability to emotionally regulate. That's why they need us to hold them and love them. I had an experience like that with my granddaughter, who is now 15, and I took her to PetSmart, one of those pet places that have all, because she wanted to see all the fish swimming around and see the birds and everything. And it was one of those busy Saturdays, and so I insisted that she get in the cart so I didn't lose her and she didn't run off. She was not happy. She started having this tantrum on the floor. And I remember, wow, I'm a grandparent now. I don't have to do it like I did when I was a mom. So I actually just sat on the floor with her and goes, I know you're really upset. I know you don't want to get in this cart, but I can't risk you running away from me in this big, huge store. I'm happy to take you around, show you all the pets, and I'm happy to sit with you here until you stop crying and screaming. But as long as you're doing that, we're not going anywhere. And I just sat there for about 10 or 15 minutes. All these people were walking around. They were judging me. And I'm like, I don't care. We're staying here. I'm doing it different than when I was a mom, because I would have lost it back then. You don't know what the heck you're doing when you start out being a mom. You just do the best you can. I think grandparents do help with some of that. But yeah, I've had that experience. But there are some really awesome videos on YouTube and other places showing parents who really know how to work with kids and emotionally help them emotionally regulate, because they don't know how to do it themselves. So it's out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's one of the things that I've been thinking about on the topic is this along the lines of letting kids fail, but also boundary setting. I guess it's full circle. Boundary setting around like, yeah, you're having a strong emotion and this is the task anyway. So you can feel your emotion and we're still going to finish the task. That idea of like, in order to teach people that the world doesn't stop because you have a specific emotional need doesn't mean you don't care for that emotional need, but it does mean that even with that emotional need, we still move forward. Otherwise, everything will come to a grinding halt is sort of the argument, I think, in the book that I'm reading. So I appreciate all of your thoughts. Thank you. Back to you, Michael.
Well, not back to me. Dana's the host now.
And I'm the last one, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So to bring everything maybe together, one book that I read a little while ago is called 4,000 Weeks. I don't know if anybody's familiar, but it's a time management book. And I feel like everybody who reads that book, their mind is blown, because it's talking about how there's 4,000 weeks in a lifetime. So you really only have 4,000 weeks to do everything that you want to do. And we kind of talked in the beginning of our conversation how women are juggling so many things. How do we have time for this? And then we talked about setting boundaries. And we talked about how do you surround yourself by people who have the same interests? So how do you find your interests? So I'd love to hear, how have all of you found the things that really matter? And how do you know where to put your time? Because you only have 4,000 weeks. Let's start with Whitney.
I think my big thing is that I love to learn and I love to grow. So that's really where I spend my time. I want to be surrounded by things that are where, it's like my brain is being blown, my mind's being blown, it's like I want to learn those bigger things. I want to learn how, I can be better. I want to learn how I can be more successful, that sort of thing. But also at the same time, it's like I also have, a couple of places where I go when I'm really discouraged, when, it's like a lot of times, maybe people listening to this podcast are like, oh, look at all these successful women. It's like, we all still have really hard days. And it's like, holy crap, do I give this business up tomorrow? Is it failing? Or, I mean, there's any number of struggles that we all go through on a regular basis. And so I think that it's a matter of finding your interests, right? But my interests are, I want to learn, I want to grow. And then I need that one place where I go when things get tough, to give my own self a little bit of motivation, encouragement, inspiration, to say, hey, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing. Like, things are going to work out. And today's just a bad day. And we're going to keep going. And so that's kind of It's what I enjoy. I don't love sitting in communities and just, talking about just things here and there. It's just not me. It's just not what interests me. So it's just a matter of finding what interests you, but finding what helps you to be your best self is ultimately, at the end of the day, what I would recommend in terms of where people go.
No, I love that. I love that you vocalize how you kind of know what you want and you're okay with people not agreeing, and you don't have to basically adapt yourself or form yourself to pretend to be something you're not. I think that's great. Aden?
Yeah, so go watch my TED Talk. That's what my TED Talk is about. It's about getting out of limbo and finding that place, that there's this place between the thing that you fear, which is whatever it is, failure, not actualizing your real self, not figuring out your purpose, whatever that is, leaving stability behind, and your greatest joy. And that place in between is limbo. And the way that you get out of limbo is by choosing joy. And, at this point, I think most people have heard of the concept of ikigai, right? That overlap of like, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What would be the greatest service to others? Like finding where all of these things overlap is a great place to go. Because I think people would tell me, like, just pursue your passion. And I didn't know what that, I'll give a little thumbs up with my camera. Just pursue your passion. Um, but I didn't know what that meant. And for me, passion wasn't a trigger word that tapped into where I felt fulfilled. It was the joy element for me. So it may not be what's your passion or what's your greatest joy. Maybe it's another word. And I think playing with the semantics of how your brain processes the world can be useful to identify what you want to do more of. But at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. What do you want to do more of? What would you do if money wasn't the defining factor? And do you want to make that a career path for yourself? Or do you want to get a job that takes care of the money thing so that you can invest your energy into the passion or joy or do more of thing? And that's where I think those questions get answered, is in that space of looking at the question through those different lenses. Like going to an optometrist, right? They're like, is it A or B? A or B? One or two? So I think, playing with how you ask yourself these questions is how you land on that. And it is A-okay if the answer for some folks is, I want to just have a job that takes care of the basics so that I can spend my mental and emotional energy on the stuff that is most fulfilling. People sell that short all the time, but there are jobs that run our society that need being done. Picking up the trash, selling the foods, all of these important jobs that are not about your greatest passion, but will definitely help you put food on the table so that you can invest in your greatest passion. And if you can turn your passion into a career, do that. But there's not a correct path. There's only the path that you choose.
No, that's great. It's equal. Live to work to live.
Yeah.
You get to choose. And neither
Yeah.
is the right answer. And I did not prompt her TED Talk,
Yeah, go
so
check it
I think
out.
I will have to listen to that. Perfect. All right, Arlene, what about you?
You said the question one more time. I was like so into what their answers were, I forgot what the exact question was.
It was basically that we have so limited time with 4,000 weeks to live, as the book describes. How can we choose? How do we choose what to do in that little bit amount of time we do have in a day?
Well, first of all, we don't want to do it with stress and anxiety. We want to say, we want to let go of that fear and that stress and anxiety in any way we can. I sort of have like a meditation mindfulness practice, and I also do yoga, whatever works for you, so that when we do make a choice of how we're going to spend our time, and it's really from the heart, because so we still have to do some of those things that are like, well, I have to balance my checkbook and pay my bills, and that's fine. We need to take care of those basic fundamental things, but really have more time for what really lights up our heart. Yeah, we need to take care of ourselves so that we can do that. I think we need to be flexible and adaptable, because maybe to take another step towards what Aiden said, but just another side of the diamond, maybe some weeks it's, I'm putting all this work, this time into my job, and I really love it, even though it's just to put food on the table. I really love, you know, dealing in the meat department, or I really love checking out people at the grocery store. And maybe other times it's like, oh, I really just feel like reading this book and helping myself to evolve and grow and to be, a better, clearer, brighter coach or mentor, whatever we do. So I don't think we need to put ourselves into a definite slot, but we need to feel into maybe on a daily or weekly basis, how can I best serve? Where do I want to invest my energy this week?
I'll add one last piece, which is when you can identify for yourself what does fulfill your heart space, whether that's, a joy word or a passion word that helps you define that, or a purpose. If you think about what is my purpose here, if you want to get into like the big questions and you're able to answer that for yourself, whatever that is, when you can fill in the blank on what is the thing that drives my existence, the thing that pushes me forward, the thing that lights me up, whatever that is. Once you identify that, other decisions become easier because you can weigh it against, is this fulfilling my mission on the planet or my destiny or God's plan for me if you are religious, whatever that is this fulfilling that? And if the answer is no, it's easier to say no.
Yeah, the Marie Kondo, right?
I
Of all
love
the things
that.
in our
Yeah.
life. Does this bring you, yeah, does this bring you joy or whatever the
Yeah,
other word
yeah.
is? And then you start, kind of putting things into their little categories and saying yes or no. All right, Michael, take this puppy home.
All right. Do you want me to answer your question or just
Oh, yeah, I want you to answer the question, of
Okay,
course.
okay, good. Well, I would say something along the lines, and I'm sure everyone probably has heard about this, is like life can be seasons where you're a kid, you're a teen, you're an adult, you're a parent, maybe a grandparent, or aunt, whatever. We go down these seasons essentially, and every season is different. Some people live in places where there's only 2 seasons, right? That's fine, right? You can live in New England, you get all 4. You get winter, fall, spring, summer, right? They're all different. You live by the water, it's very humid. You don't like the humidity. Don't stay there. I always say, you are not a tree. You can choose whatever you want. You're not stuck where you are. But if you are stuck, ask yourself, well, how can I get unstuck? And typically the solution is you ask help, you ask for help. And it's something I think, we did really well today, where we weren't afraid to say, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not afraid to ask for help. And I think since we have such a limited amount of time, we should not be, this individualized person. We should be looking at, well, let me see who can help me. And then you get over that hurdle because there's always someone who has done what you would like to do, right? There's very little things that people have not done, right? Roger Bannister, for example, the sub 4-minute mile, he was the first man to do it, but then everyone else did it after him. There's very few people who have done what you would like to do now. If you are this person with a grandiose idea, the first person to want to do something, you need to surround yourself with people who have growth mindsets, people who want to see you win as much as you want to win. And when you can surround yourself with those people, it doesn't matter if they did it or not. You don't need an army to be successful. You need just a couple of people, right? You can do it yourself, yes, but 2 to 5 people max. So figure out who those people are in your life. And it doesn't necessarily matter about week 1, week 10, week 40, whatever. You're going to say, I'm on this journey. And as long as you have good company, I mean, it's really good. I don't know if you ever went on a road trip with someone and you're just like, I don't like this person. It's miserable, right? So surround yourself with the people who are going to make that journey so much more pleasurable. And it's not going to be so much of, I have this much time left. It's how much time I get to spend. So we're living more in the moment rather than looking at the future that is always going to be there. It's just like we take our presence away. And I think that does a disservice to many people. Did you want to say something on it?
No, I think that was great. I think that was a good wrap up.
Okay, good. Okay, typically the host will say something at the end. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give her a chance to be the host, but not a problem. I'll take back the reins. I have been doing this for a bit. So like I said, just elaborating a little bit, Aden said something early on. It's okay to not have everything figured out. And, just to elaborate on that, it's, we might not have things figured out. It's already, 2025, essentially. So you might say, well, I don't have it figured out. We are so quick to say, I'm going to postpone this. I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do it tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, right? And the human mind, it does something very interesting. It does this thing of the concept of something new. So the New Year's has so much power to it, but it doesn't have to be New Year's. It could be a new day. It could be a new moment if you want to even go like more micro. It could be a new week, a new month, but yet we think everyone else is doing it, so let me do it. Well, it's not so much about what everyone else is doing in life. It's about what you would like to have done and accomplished in life. Our conversation was definitely one where people can look at how people are just human. We are people who are figuring it out as we go, but it doesn't mean we have to keep on failing and failing and failing and think that we're in this fight by ourselves. Here we have four wonderful ladies who have tried so many different things in life. Maybe they have succeeded, maybe they have failed. They have stories to tell. And I have found that if you can just sit down and listen rather than just, say, okay, I'm going to do what I want. Great. Yeah, you can live in your ego. You can live in your emotion. But at the end of the day, how can you get to the next level? And typically, you need a coach, you need a mentor, you need a teacher, you need someone who's going to say, I'm going to pull the best out of you. Because I know most people, when it comes to success, they run from it because they understand that the work involved in order to get it, it could be debilitating. It's uncomfortable. And we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. As we begin to wrap up, I'm going to go around. I'm going to give you the order and then just kind of final words and then plug audience, website, social medias, etc. So the order is Aden, Arlene, Daina, and Whitney. All right. So Aden.
Just to reiterate, new moment, new opportunity, new year, new opportunity. If we're limited to 4,000 weeks, Daina, then that's 4,000 weeks of opportunity, Keep going until you can't go no more. That's what I'd say. And as far as trying to find me out there, it's, again, my name is pretty easy. There's only one of me. So just connect with me on LinkedIn, message me if you have questions.
Thanks, Aden. I guess what I would leave with the audience for 2025 is like a trinity of energies that I love, which is kindness, patience, and tolerance. So no matter what you're choosing to do or change or be different or more of the same in the next year, just remember that it's really, really important to be kind, patient, and tolerant with yourself and others. As long as we're in that holding that loving and expansive and judgment-free space, so much is possible. I wish you all the best in the new year. If you want to find me, if you Google Arlene Cohen Miller, I'm like Aden. That's only one of me. You have to put the Cohen in there because there's a million Arlene Millers. And my website is Jewel Consultancy, like the diamond jewel, and then consultancy.com. And I'd love to connect with you.
This was a great conversation, and it's really great being in a room and talking about things that I don't typically talk about with other people. So I really loved everyone's perspective. Sounds like we're all kind of on the same path and do have a similar viewpoint, or maybe it's just that we're all very open-minded and curious. So that's good. My name is Daina Rasutis. My business is Table to Crave. I'm a nutrition therapist, so definitely look me up if you're looking for any type of nutrition coaching or to learn more.
And to wrap it up, my final comments, just because I'm focused on health and wellness. The new year is a big time for people to say, "Oh, I'm gonna get my health in check. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna start eating healthy, whatever." The biggest piece of advice that I can give to anyone really wanting to improve their health in 2025 is just take the first small step. Too many people try to do everything all at once. I'm going to change everything starting, beginning of January, and then you only stick to it for a short period of time. The reality is that human beings are successful when we habit stack. You start with one thing and master it, and then take on the next and master it and take on the next. So if you're trying to improve your health, number one, take your first small step. Whether that's trying to make healthier choices, or maybe you are wanting to get to the gym a little bit more, but don't try to do everything all at once. Master one, and then move on to the next. I'm Whitney Prude. You can find me at www.mywholeandhappylife.com, or same thing on Instagram at mywholeandhappylife.
Perfect. And if you haven't done so already, all the links are going to be in the description box below. Also, I will be putting the link for their individual podcast episodes with me, so you can definitely go back and rewind if you haven't watched them with me, just having a one-on-one with them. And you're going to find that they are a breath of fresh air. It's a delight to know that someone is human. And I know it can be daunting sometimes to reach out to someone, to want to work with someone when it feels almost like you are the shadow of them. And it's not so much that you are inferior in any way. It's just that you see and you resonate with someone who you would like to become. And there's nothing wrong with working with someone for a time, for a season, if it even be that, and then you level up. I always say, like the book that changed your life is not the book that changed your life. It's all the subsequent books that you've read. So with each podcast episode, there's always these little nuggets. When you're looking for gold in the river, you find all these little flakes. And if you melt it all down, then you get a nugget, right? And eventually you get a bar. And that's life, right? It's the little things that we have to look at. We have to look at our practice every single day. Not so much of, my life is so difficult. Let's look at the difficulties and let's start to break them apart little by little. If you order a pizza, for example, you're not going to put the whole pizza in your mouth. Okay, if you do, I hope you know, like you have someone in your house that can, know CPR. We want to make sure we're taking bite-sized bites. We chew our food. We make sure we do the things that we have to do. And it doesn't just have to be eating. It's everything, business, relationships. All of it requires a step-by-step process. So like I said, all of these wonderful ladies that came on, wonderful conversation today. I encourage you to check out their socials, check out the website to learn more of how they can help you in all aspects of your life. Because like I said, we are human. There is no perfect. And if you can realize that sooner than later, you're going to be in a better place in 2025. So thank you, ladies, for coming on, spending some time sharing your thoughts and your wisdoms with us, and also having a cordial conversation.